Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to another episode of My Favourite Movies, the self-explanatory series where I talk about some of my favourite movies of all time. Now last time we took a look at the 1979 masterpiece by Ridley Scott that is Alien and went through all the reasons why I love that movie so much. But today we have a very special film because this is a film that is very close to my heart and is probably the film I've watched the most in my entire life. You know how there's always those one or two films that you've watched countless times, more than any other film ever made, and you would happily just continue rewatching them again and again and again. Today's film most certainly fits in that category and is one that I've loved almost my entire life. Today we are going to be looking at my favourite animated film of all time and is one of the most underrated Disney films ever made. I am of course talking about The Emperor's New Groove, released in the year 2000, directed by Mark Dindal. Now, unlike Alien, where I watched it at a certain age, didn't quite get it, and then sort of re-evaluated it the older I got, Emperor's New Groove is nothing like that. This is a film that I've watched since I was very, very young, and have continued to watch even to this day. When I was a very young kid, there used to be this pile of Disney animated VHSs that I would watch on constant repeat round my nan's house. Some of them included Robin Hood, the Aristocats, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and I think Lilo and Stitch was also one of them. And I would just watch them to death every time I went round my nan's house. However, as much as I loved Robin Hood and the Aristocats and Lilo and Stitch, without a doubt, the one I watched the most was The Emperor's New Groove. I would watch that every single time I went round there, and I would never get bored of it, and I would just want to rewatch it again and again and again. Now, pinpointing why I love this film so much as an adult is really easy to do. I can easily explain to you why I love certain elements and what makes the film so special for me. However, trying to figure out why I loved it so much as a very, very young kid, I'm still trying to figure that one out. And to be honest, I think it might have something to do with the animation style and the pacing. Because I had these specific Disney films on constant repeat, for the most part I was used to the traditional Disney animation style that you saw in stuff like Robin Hood and the Aristocats. And The Emperor's New Groove, for those of you that have seen it, doesn't really fit into that animation style. It falls into that weird era of like the late 90s and early 2000s where Disney were trying to keep the feel of the Disney films that you know and love, but were trying something different with the style of animation. I think the first film they tried this with was Hercules, and then they did it again here with Emperor's New Groove, and I think they kept doing it with stuff like Treasure Planet and Atlantis. Something about this specific style really works for the sake of the characters and the world that this film is trying to set up, but also because this style is not particularly complex in terms of the design of it. It's a very simple, stripped-back approach that I think works in elevating especially the humour of this film. And whilst we're on that point, I also want to add that I've seen a lot of Disney animated films throughout my life. Yet, there is one thing about this film that I will always stand by till the day I die. I think that The Emperor's New Groove, hands down, is the funniest film Disney have made to date. Whether you're looking at live action stuff or animated, I just think The Emperor's New Groove is probably the funniest thing they've ever made. The script alone is brilliant. It's not the most convoluted or deep thing in the world, but it just works in being a simple story that is just full of very, very funny moments, and is one of those rare scripts where every character gets a moment that is genuinely really funny. There are some standout characters like Kronk and Yzma, who are two of my favourite Disney villains of all time. They're both as stupid as each other. It's just seeing them on screen together is hilarious, and their interactions lead to some of the funniest moments in the entire film, without a doubt.
Pull the lever, Kronk. Wrong lever!
Huh?
Why do we even have that lever?
But as I said before, every character at some point in the film gets a moment to shine in terms of the comedy, whether it's Kuzco or Pacha, or even Pacha's wife, who isn't really in the film that much, but she does get a couple of lines here and there that do really land on multiple rewatches. And because I've seen this film so many times and the script is as funny as it is, it's one of those rare instances where I laughed the first time I watched it, and I still laugh every single time I watch it now, which I don't really get with many comedies, because there are some comedies where you watch it the first time and you're cracking up, laughing at all the right points, and it works. You then watch it, a few months or so or a year later, and not as many of the jokes land. I think I've had that with a few comedies throughout the years, but The Emperor's New Groove is definitely not one of them, and in fact kind of gets funnier the more you rewatch it. For example, and take into account I have watched this film God knows how many times, during, I think, the first lockdown here in the UK, I rewatched the film with my mum, and both me and my mum have watched this film so many times, I can't even count how many times we've both watched it. And we noticed something we have never noticed before, and we were both really surprised we'd only just picked up on it, considering we've watched it like 50 plus times. And it's during the dinner scene where Yzma and Kronk are trying to poison Kuzco, and Kronk ends up putting what he thinks is the poison into all of the drinks, so he tells Yzma not to drink it. She throws it behind her, and for a long period of time, I thought that was just the joke. She just throws it behind her, and that's it. But the next time it cuts to a wide shot of her, and this is literally moments before we find out that it wasn't poison and it ends up being extract of llama, that the cactus that she threw the drink on behind her has formed into the shape of a llama. It's still a cactus, it's just in the shape of a llama. And I just love that little detail, and the fact that it took me this long to notice that, and the fact that that little detail is there, just really cements how funny this film really is. I also think this is one of the most quotable Disney films as well, and again, that is saying something considering Disney's back catalogue and how many quotable films they have in their filmography. But for me, and I think this kind of links into how many times I've seen the film, I can quote this film back to front with ease. And there are actually quite a few quotes from this film that I use in real life for specific scenarios. Like, if someone's just tried to explain something to me and I have no fucking clue what they've just said, I will always quote Kronk when he pulls down the map and goes, well, by all accounts, it doesn't make any sense. The film is also not particularly long. It's about an hour and a half, and it flies by really quickly because the pace of this film does not give up throughout the entire thing. From the moment Tom Jones comes on screen singing the theme tune all the way to the end, the film has this relentless fast pace to it that again really elevates the humour and the comedic moments of the film, because I feel like the fast-paced nature of this film really lends itself to that comedic style. So having the film be the pace that it is, and having the jokes be thrown at you literally one after another that quickly, I think works in the film's favour. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, if the film is so fast-paced and is just purely relied on humour, does it just push all character development and character moments to the side? And I can completely understand if someone does make that argument, because there are times where it can feel like that. But the film does sort of go out of its way to try and squeeze in some quiet moments to let the film and the characters breathe just for a second before everything goes nuts again. And I think those small character moments that are few and far between do really work. There aren't many, but considering the plot and the characters are trying to develop alongside this fast-paced story that we're being shown, I think all of it kind of works really well. You're already getting to know these characters through the events of the film anyway. These one or two small moments that are scattered throughout the film, again, just kind of elevate what we've already got to know about these characters. Also, the score for this film is just fantastic. It uses a lot of jazz, big band elements that really work, again, in elevating that fast-paced nature of the film, but also just kind of the tongue-in-cheek tone as well of the film. If it was all orchestral and, very serious and dramatic, I don't think it would work for this style of film, but because the film doesn't take itself that seriously and is very humorous in nature, and the score also reflects that, I think it really works in really adding to the fast-paced nature of the film, but also in the fact that it doesn't take itself that seriously as well. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is not what The Emperor's New Groove was originally going to look and sound like. I think it was going to be called something like Kingdom of the Sun or something, and was going to be a little bit more serious in tone, more in line with something like The Lion King than what we ended up getting. And there is a really fascinating documentary called The Sweatbox, which is a documentary that I don't think Disney wants you to see. But it is on YouTube, and it is a really interesting documentary about how this film ended up completely doing a 180, and the end product was nothing like what they originally had in mind. And don't get me wrong, this is one of my favourite films of all time as it is. I love the film as it ended up becoming, but watching this process take place and just seeing them having to start from scratch again and again and again, and how much turmoil it caused within the team, is really fascinating. And even if you love this film as much as I do, I still recommend watching The Sweatbox because it is a fascinating watch nonetheless. But anyway, The Emperor's New Groove is, and always will be, one of my favourite films of all time. It has been since I was a little kid, and still remains one of my favourites to this day. If you've seen The Emperor's New Groove, please let me know what you think about it in the comments below, because I could spend hours talking about this film. I'm not joking. If you like the video, then give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye!